as Luke said, the gift of singleness, I was thinking more about it. It's almost, we're going to dig into a little bit more on the stewardship side. I love 1 Peter 4:10 was kind of where I landed when I was thinking about stewardship. It says that each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. And it's like, there are days, if I'm honest, where singleness doesn't feel like much of a gift. Right? There are days when it doesn't feel like being single is much of a gift. And it's like, but I know that there's something nestled in there, that the season of being solo, in a sense. And I also want to recognize the fact that there's some of us who may always be single, right? Like, that's a possibility. It's literally biblical.
Yeah.
But there's some of us who are called into marriage, called into those relationships. And it's we have to recognize that the season that we're in and the time that we're in is a gift, right? I think we're so quick to just think, oh, I've just got the breath in my lungs for today. Hang on. Let's take a minute and recognize the miracle that took place for us to exist today.
Come on. Yeah, that's good. I'll add one thing to that, too.
Please.
The divorce rate is higher than it's ever been today. And just not to know the answer to this, but as Christians, right? This is a Christian teaching for the record. We're going to come at it the best we can from a biblical point of view. But what if by some chance, like Jordan said, celibacy, which means singleness for your life, like it's a vow of singleness, it is a call to some. Paul would actually, and you'll get into this, but Paul would actually say, I prefer it, which, cool, brother. He was single, so he was preaching what he was teaching. Yeah. And, but what if the divorce rate's so high because God actually put the gift of celibacy on some people, and we have this societal pressure which exists, and I would love for you to even hit on that a little bit, where it's like, oh, you're 28 and single? Like, we need to, and it's, there's a pressure, believer and non-believer, that we actually can put on people, aware, unaware, intentionally, unintentional. And so we think, I gotta get married, I gotta get married. So much so that you might settle or marry the wrong person, and then 5-10 years later, it's like, we're getting a divorce.
Yeah.
What if the divorce rate is actually so high because some people are called to celibacy, but are so against that philosophy, a biblical philosophy, because of the world's philosophy? Just a thought, right?
That's good. Yeah. That's hard, but that's good.
It is hard.
It's tension, right? Just enough tension on the strings. You get the right sound out of the guitar. There you go. So, and you'll catch, Luke and I are going to kind of just converse. We're at a house. I mean, goodness gracious. So, again, back to the stewardship of singleness. If you're single, what if you're actually single right now because God wants to champion that in you, right? There's something inside of your heart that in this season of being single, whether, like Luke said, whether it's lifelong or just this, next few months or next few years, what is it in your heart that can be stewarded in that place? It's actually trusting his timing. We see a guy in the Bible who didn't do the best job of trusting God's timing. His name was Jonah. Y'all know that story? I love this story, Jonah. I told Luke I was going to try my hardest to not pull all the VeggieTale raps out from the Jonah soundtrack today. I did rap while we were talking about it.
You should just give us a little jingle.
No.
Everybody.
So Jonah set sail on a pirate ship in a dreadful gale, got eaten up by a giant. Yeah, it's way too ingrained in the back of my head. I don't know where it is. It's one of those things in your brain that just should pay rent because it stays in there. It's I could please teach me budgeting. Can we change out that? Let's learn how to budget instead of VeggieTales raps. Anyway, so we see Jonah. Jonah 4:9-11. I threw the message up on the screen because I actually love the verbiage in the message, right? So it says, then God said to Jonah, what right do you have to get angry about the shade tree? So Jonah goes to the city of Nineveh, or actually he doesn't. He goes to the city of Tarshish, which is on the opposite side of the city. Yeah, Tarshish. Opposite side of the map from Nineveh, where Jesus had God had called him to go to Nineveh, to these people who were just downright dirty sinners, confused, didn't know their left hand from the right. Right. And Jonah wanted, he was I ain't going there, they don't deserve this. So he, gets on the boat, goes the opposite way, literally pays a tariff to go the opposite direction. And we all know the story, right? He gets thrown off the boat, eaten by a whale, spat back up on the sea, Here's the Lord. Goes to Nineveh. So we're picking up at the very end of the story. He's gone, like, he's like, Lord, here I am at Nineveh, right? So then God said to Jonah, what right do you have to get angry about this shade tree? So the Lord had, like, planted this tree overnight to shade Jonah as Jonah was, like, waiting for the destruction of the Lord to come upon the city of Nineveh. He was so angry and bitter about it that he was just waiting for it to blow up. He was like, all right, any day. Any day. He's just waiting. But overnight, this shade tree came up, and then it went away. It literally, and it actually, that was funny. It didn't go away. The Lord sent a worm to eat the tree. We're still trying to figure that out. But it's like this funny moment where it's like, we know that the Lord likes to teach us things, right? Even when we go through a hard moment, he's trying to teach.
Come on.
So this is it. Jonah said, well, I have plenty of right. It's made me angry enough to die. But then God said, well, what's this? How is it that you can change your feelings from pleasure to anger overnight about a mere shade tree that you did nothing to get? You neither planted it nor watered it. It grew up one night and then died the next night. So why can't I likewise change what I feel about Nineveh from anger to pleasure? This big city of more than 120,000 childlike people who don't know their right from their wrong. To say nothing of all the innocent animals too. So there's God in this moment is like, he's looking at Jonah, he's like, get it? I know that you're hot. Like, I know that you're mad. And like, you just change your feelings overnight, but you're mad at me. And it's like, but why can't I go deliver these people in Nineveh and change my feelings about them overnight? You know, and I think in that moment, we really see the reflection of God's timing is so outside of what we can comprehend. Yeah. And Jonah was trying his hardest to comprehend it, but he wasn't getting it. And it's so key. And in those moments, if we actually really trust God's timing, then we can really have an attitude shift. And I think for me, that's been one comforting piece is like, Lord, I will trust your timing. Because suddenly when I trust him with it, I'm not holding on to it and trying to steward it.
That's good.
Like, I just get to hold it and I go, okay, open hands. And if it comes through, it comes through. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. It doesn't mean I'm not taking action. It doesn't mean I'm not sitting and working on the soil. You know, it's the same thing with the plants outside. I'm probably going to reference the garden too much. But I was telling Luke the other day, we were talking about some of the plants, and he's like, I just don't get it. Some of these plants aren't growing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's May. Like, they've only been in the ground for 3 weeks.
Yeah, imagine this. Imagine I say, hey, we got our cucumber plant, and it's creating fruit. Brandon, do you want me to give you a cucumber? And he's like, yeah, I love it. And he's waiting for this cucumber, cut it up. I'm like, all right, here you go. And it's that big. And he's like, and it doesn't even taste because the fruit hasn't been produced yet, right? Yeah. It wouldn't make sense for us to like go to the farmer's market and be like, here's all our fruit. And it's just premature, not even alive, not even fruited, not even, mature.
Yep.
And so it's like, well, what if the season of singleness, there it is, is actually God going, I want to produce something in you that the loved one can't do, that you actually are going to become a gift to them because I'm producing something in you. Yeah. And I love Song of Songs. This was golly, put this in the insert of your memory. Do not awaken love until it pleases. Yeah. Don't just apply that to relationships, apply that to everything. Do not awaken love until it pleases. What does it look like to go, you know what, Lord? I'm going to go ahead and bet on the fact that maybe you are the Alpha, the Omega. We're singing about it, right? The beginning from the end. Maybe you've seen the whole route of the potentials of my life. And if I just trust you and wait on the Lord, the best is yet to come. Yeah. It's like, how many of us, when we go to the GPS and it gives us 3 different routes, we choose the longest one? Anybody do that? One person? I doubt it. I doubt it. I want to.
If you're on a rush, I doubt it.
One out of how many people are here? 25? I'll take those odds, right?
Yeah.
We don't do that. We go, I want the fastest route. I'll pay the tolls if I have to, right?
Yeah.
But what does it look like for us to go, man, what if the fastest way to get to where God wants us to get is to wait on the Lord and trust Him and His faithfulness?
No, that's it. That's so good. I think so. We're going to settle in a little bit to this stewardship idea, right? So we saw how Jonah didn't steward something so well. Need us to be reminded that Jonah went on his own timing. He did not trust the Lord. He got swallowed by a whale and then vomited out onto the shore. what's going to happen to us? You know, like, that was literally my question. I was like, wait, if Jonah got swallowed by a whale, I better not go to the beach anytime soon if I'm not trusting the Lord. You know, it's like this moment of like, oh, like, I need to pay attention to how I'm trusting the Lord in whatever season I'm in to make sure that I'm not going to, you know, like, the Lord will find you. He's good at that. Hey, you know, he'll call you out wherever you're at and pull you right back in, you know. So, and this is the kindness of Jesus. So I think now we're going to focus in a little bit on what it's like to do singleness well. And there's really some grit in there. Like, so some of this might make you upset. Some of it might prompt those questions. Like I said, ask questions. We're going to have some time at the end for that. So first we'll hit on how it's hard. So how is singleness difficult? I'm not going to ask for a raise of hands, but I feel like most people in their season of singleness probably find it a little bit difficult sometimes. One of the first key points for this, I think it requires vulnerability. It doesn't suggest vulnerability, right? So in this season of life of being a single person, I have had to commit to vulnerability in my life. And the moments where I've lacked vulnerability are actually the moments where I've faltered away from the Lord the most.
Say that one more time.
So the moments where I've lacked vulnerability are actually the moments where I've faltered from the Lord the most. I worry about the future, or, oh boy, let me push this button. Might step on some toes, but that's okay. We're all about it. And steel toe boots are a thing if you're really scared. But intentional sin because I'm single. Ooh, yeah, good. So, right? Like, how many of us, we go, oh, well, I'm single, so it doesn't matter if, you know, I pull up that website. I'm not offending anybody. I'm not in a relationship. I don't have anybody to make mad if I, you know, go look at something or go do something. Like, it's not about, at this point, it's not about the other person. It's about the other person. You know, and that, like, that is convicting for me. That is the vulnerability nugget in my heart, you know. It's like, the more open I am, and I mean, I had a moment with Luke a few months ago where I literally just walked in the house and I like just hurled out sin that I was keeping in my life or had kept, and I was just like, I've never told anybody that before.
Yeah.
But it released something, you know, and that's that vulnerability piece. You're accountable to God first, whether you're in a relationship or not.
Yeah, that's true.
So another way is hard. Loneliness is often easily found. It's easy to be lonely. But it's hard to work through too, right? So I think that's, and I'll hit on this. This is actually one of my last little chunks in this section is we'll talk about what do we need, like what do single people need from their friends in relationships and what do friends in relationships need from their single people. And the funny part is it's almost the same. So, and then finally, just having contentment in your season. I love this quote from The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry with Comer. If you aren't tired of me talking about it, I'm sorry, you'll get there. But contentment in your season. Living in such a way that your unfulfilled desires no longer curb your happiness. That's what contentment actually looks like. It's your unfulfilled desires no longer curbing your happiness.
It's really good.
So for me, I easily find myself, you know, I might see my couple friends or, you know, they invite me to come watch something with them and I have to check myself of like, okay, but this is the time for the couple. And it's like, wait, no, they've invited me into this, so I'm going to accept the invitation to just go. You know, like that is, and it's hard. It's not always easy, but it's some of those moments. How is the singleness season easy? For me, one thing that I recognize is you actually have more time and a little bit less relationship management work. The people that are in relationships in the room would probably argue that relationships take some work, right? I love this though, but it's more time to practice. You get to practice how you can communicate with people, how you can go into intentional friendships with others, because that teaches you a template of skills to then carry into a relationship. Isn't that cool? So it's like I might not be in a relationship with my best friend, of course, but I am getting the skills to understand how to communicate, how to spend time with someone and all that.
That's good.
I just realized my notes are pointing back, so that's why I was so confused. Okay. You get permission to build friendships, too. Like, you actually have this space to maybe have more people that are in your life in a sense. And then it also just makes you free of concern. Paul, you got anything on this? Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7:32 through 35, I would like for you to be free of concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs and how he can please the Lord. But a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world and how he can please his wife. And his interests are divided. And an unmarried woman or a virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. But a married man or a married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world, how she can please her husband. I'm saying this for your own good, not to restrict you, right? We're not saying that marriage is a bad thing. It's not to restrict anybody, but that you may live in a right way in undivided devotion to the Lord. And I think learning how to steward singleness is actually first learning how to steward that intimate relationship with the Father, so that you then from that place are more prepared to go into the season of maybe not being single.
Well, if you want to have fun with the language, it's like you're in a relationship with the Lord before you're in a relationship with somebody else. So you might be like, well, I'm single, but I'm following Jesus. But I mean, why do we call that a relationship, right? Like, why? It just makes so much sense. Like, steward that relationship with the Lord, and then it prepares you to be in a relationship with somebody else.
Yeah, there you go. So, all of that to say, I think there's also, we've hit on easy, we've hit on hard. It's also, what about complacency? Ooh, that's the gross word, right? I think that sometimes we can become complacent. We actually have a loss of hope in the, not being available to the process. I know that I've talked about that becoming available to it, right? We have to live in this space of okay, Lord, if you're going to show me this, then I want to be available to it, right? So we have to make ourselves available. Proverbs 18:22 says, "He who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord," right? So the screen actually says the Message version, if I'm not mistaken. It says, "Find a good spouse," right? Yeah, you find a good life. And I love that. It's like, and I'm like, I saw that grid. It's just like, Jordan's like, you're in the season of engagement and you're like, it's this grin. It's like, I found a good thing, And I think it's so good that at the end, I think we're so quick to look past and receives favor from the Lord. And even the more, the favor of God, And it's like, okay, I might not personally be at that point where I'm receiving that favor of God, but in my own life, I am still seeing the favor of God.
Yeah.
And
he's still accessible. He's still going to give it, but I know that there's a greater measure in that.
And can I just asterisk that as well? Because you might be going, well, why on earth would I agree with Paul on celibacy then, that if I find someone, I find favor with God? But I would say this, and I really believe this. I believe that God's grace is sufficient for our needs. And so God actually might have on someone's life to get married and be a prophetic symbol to the world, what it looks like for wives to submit to your husbands and husbands to lay your life down as Christ laid his life down for the church. I know that's in a couple weeks, but still, that might be something. But then I think the other side is God will give grace to anybody he's called to a life of celibacy. Years ago, some of us were there. We were at this conference in Raleigh, North Carolina with our friends at Ignite Movement. And there was this woman who was, she must have been in her 70s at this point, Nancy. And she had, I think for all of us, it was like one of the most impactful messages we've heard. And she was talking about how her whole life she's been celibate. She has not been married. But you could see my gosh, I can't even put it into words. The unbelievable depth and intimacy she had with the Lord. And I was like, that is someone married to Jesus as if I've never seen it before. The love and the depth and the compassion and the fulfillment that she had with Jesus. And I thought to myself, man, God fixed my heart on thinking, oh my gosh, people that live celibate, they're missing something so much better. Because I thought, oh my gosh, it's idolatry. I've actually been putting the vision of marriage over the vision of what it means to know God in the fullness of knowing Him. And listening to her and hearing the way that she talked about Him, I realized right then and there, gosh, if God has called people to this lifestyle, He's not just calling them to a death sentence. He's calling them to the greatest thing ever. It's a love that I would argue we actually don't fully have access to in a way if that capacity is filled with someone else. Does that make sense? Like His grace is actually sufficient. So yes, one who finds a good wife finds a good thing, or a good husband, whatever, a spouse. and the favor of God.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's the replacement of not that intimacy with God if they don't.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's good.
Right.
That's good. And then, finally, I wanted to hit on this point of, as we steward singleness, what do people kind of need from one another in their seasons
really
of life?
good.
Like that's one thing that I've reflected on a lot. I go back, I think this is where the cadre model comes in real good handy. Like
Cadre is a small group that we do in our church, so just FYI.
That's good. So what do you need from your friends that are in a relationship? What do you need from your friends that are single, right? So we're going to look at both of those a little bit.
Come on.
I think the first thing is just knowing where your friend is in their stage of life. First off, we need to know where each other are, what's happening, what's going on, where are you at? And that's where that small group model actually comes into play of okay, I'm seeing this person every week. I know what they're going through. I know where they're wrestling. I know what stage of life they're in.
Yeah, that's important.
And then, what's their current struggle or what's their current blessing with their singleness or relationship status? And then how can you share that burden? I love that image of the armor bearer when, is it Samuel, I think it is? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Samuel has this armor bearer and he's like, heart and soul, I am with you. All that I have is with you through what you're walking through. And I think that's really one of the deepest things for me. The next one is time. We know that time is a hard necessity to find, right? And we might not see as much of the people, if someone gets in a relationship, I know that I've experienced that where I remember my best friend in college, he started to date one of our mutual best friends, so it's him and her would just disappear. But one thing that he did was he set a time aside with me every week. He was like, we're still going to be friends. We're still going to have our intentional quality time. But one of the keynotes, and it actually came up in our conversation last night with the guys, was we also have to remember that reasonable expectations have to be defined out of that, right? So we can't just they said that they would spend time with me, and it's only been 16 hours this week. And it's okay, well, let's talk about the fact that it's still been 16 hours, and you still... So, we have to check ourselves. We have to
share
build
the
in.
table image that the Lord gave you? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, man.
You're still at the table, but you're in
yeah. So that was one of my wrestles. Was I moved from college, it was suddenly realizing that these people are still at a table seated with me, right? They're just farther down. They're at a different seat. For this season of life, you might have someone who's right beside you. That was some of what our friendship was. When Amanda came and moved to Fredericksburg, I was excited, but I felt Luke scoot down a few chairs. But I knew that for that season, he needed to invest time with his soon-to-be wife. Mm-hmm. Whereas I was okay, but I've still got people that can sit beside me at the table. Right. It's not like I'm by myself. And we're still at the table. I was still seeing him. I was getting to know Amanda at that point. I still got to be a participant in it. And, that's another piece. How do we bring people into that? Consistency adds to the fervency of that, right? So if we keep it consistent, we keep that time, consistency will add to the fervency of that friendship. And one of my favorite things that Luke has ever said is that proximity doesn't equal intimacy, right? So no matter how close we are, we might live with someone, we might share a room with them, but I still need time with Austin, even though I share a bedroom with him. And it's he's my literal roommate, but I'm seeing this guy and I'm but I still need to set time apart to actually hear how he's doing, And then keeping ourselves in check too, I think is key. We've got to check our attitude. And I think one of the quickest things for both our single friends and our friends in a relationship, grace has to be the first Band-Aid that you throw on that thing. We have to be quick to go, okay, they might have done that, but they probably didn't mean it the way that I'm feeling it. Still talk to people about how it made you feel, or if you're offended. It's Jesus was offended at moments, but more often than not, he lived from a place of an unoffendable heart. More often than not, he was I'm going to show grace where it's due. Even when, those people came to put him on a cross, he was still willing to show grace. Easy pitfalls for both sides, I think, envy, greed, impatience, or even rejection, right? Sometimes we're just so frustrated with someone, we close them out of our life. And we push him out the side. It's suddenly my best friend is in a relationship and he's not spending any time with me, and I haven't seen my bro, and all of a sudden I'm I don't want anything to do with him. And check yourself on that. That's hard, right? It's a valid feeling, but suddenly we just cut completely out. And it does more damage than it does good, because more often than not, that person might not even know that's how we're feeling.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
Yeah.
Well, now we're going to transition. So that was a lot of singleness and how to steward the gift of singleness. And that's, man, thank you for that, because that was really good information and practical. And so you know what the word says, that, man, if you've been given something, you best steward it. And so we really want to encourage every person here, not just to hear that, but to share that with each other, wrestle with that, live that. As we look into now kind of the vision of dating, here's the first question. And this really is the first question. Are you in a good relationship with Jesus? Are you actively pursuing God? Are you rooted and grounded in your relationship with the Lord? Here's a couple ways that we can see that. Is there a greater God consciousness in your life or a self-consciousness in your life? God consciousness versus self-consciousness. What do I mean by that? Everything you do you consider how it can be worshipful to the Lord? See, naysayers will go, well, you're just over spiritualizing everything. Like, not we got to be careful with compartmentalization in our faith. Well, when I'm with my church people, I act a certain way, or when I'm, in my small group, I'll live a certain way. But, when I'm with the homies, or I'm with the girls, and we're out on the town, or, no one's around, and I'm in my room, and I've got my Instagram, and one thing leads to the next, and how quick does that lead us to temptation? How quickly does one picture, or one message, or one search, you hit that search bar on your Instagram, it's game over. I avoid that button as much as I can. I wish I could break it. Because it's like, look at all these things. Oh man, there's all these pictures that are okay, but that one caught my eye, that girl in the bikini, and X leads to Y leads to Z. Let's not act like we don't know what we're talking about here. So, I love what Colossians 3:17 says. Whatever you do, whether in word or in deed, whatever you say or whatever you do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. God consciousness versus self-consciousness. What am I doing right now? Is it actually for the benefit of worshiping the Lord, or is it actually for the benefit of serving my flesh? And you might think, well, it's just like small little things. I'm telling you, even the shows we watch on Netflix, the music we listen to in our cars, the podcasts we listen to, the Snapchats we send, I'm coming for everybody in this house or this morning. I'm telling you, it's these little things. And if you plant a seed, don't be surprised when it actually grows into a weed or a beautiful plant, a beautiful flower.
If I can, Comer speaks in his book, One Unique Spot, he said, it's not sometimes the question of what would Jesus do, but what would Jesus do if he were me? Like, so if because sometimes it's hard to go like, oh, well, I guess I would feed 5,000 people. No, it's actually like, okay, I'm in this moment, and if God is living inside of me, what is the choice that I'm going to make in this moment? That has helped me a lot, even the last 2 weeks of my life. Like, it's just like, for me, it's recognizing that he's inside of me, and that from that place I have power and authority over my flesh, over my thoughts, over my eyes, over my mouth, and it's like, oh, well, suddenly there's the confidence that I've been hunting for years. So
yeah, I'm gonna say, like, just strap in, folks, because we didn't come to pretend to be Christians today. We came to be Christians today. I used to struggle with masturbation, like many probably in this room can resonate, and I eventually got to a thought of, the Holy Spirit lives in me. Not just when I'm worshiping the Lord, when I'm struggling through sin. And that was a serious thought that I started to consider, was like, dang, Lord, like, you're with me in every instance of my life. And so I love what you're saying. It's like, not just what if, but the reality that God lives in me. Everyone got their seatbelts on? What else? How are you in a good relationship with Jesus? Are you consistently, and underline that word consistently, growing in the knowledge of and the love of God, not just to know him, but to experience him, head and heart? And are you eliminating sin in your life? I love what Jordan said about the cadre, the accountability, the small group. Gosh, the biggest reason we gather in small groups is not to become educated in the Bible, because we should really find time to do that on a daily basis. It's for the sake of accountability. I love what Craig Groeschel says. It's our strengths might impress people, our weaknesses is how we connect to people. When we're in a cadre and we're confessing what we're struggling with, and we're being honest, it's going, I'm struggling with the same thing. Can we hold each other accountable? Can we text each other on a daily basis? Hey, bro, I'm struggling with this, but I'm doing better. How are you doing, right? How are we connecting with each other? I'm going to go ahead and say this. If you're addicted to anything, you're not ready for a relationship. If you're addicted to anything, alcohol, drugs, pornography, gossip, whatever else you want to, X, Y, and Z, whatever you want to replace and put it in. If you are struggling with addiction, you're not ready, because what's going to happen is you're going to take whatever that struggle is and you're going to actually hurt that person you're pursuing. You've got to work on yourself first. Second thing, and Jordan kind of touched on this, are you content? Are you already content? Is Jesus enough? If it never happens, if you never actually get into a relationship, if you never get married, are you going to be okay? Gosh, I'm telling you, one of the first, seriously, I've always understood that, but before I met Amanda, I literally had to, every night before I went to bed, I went, Lord, whoever she is, I'm putting her on the altar. If it's not for me, I'm putting her on the altar. This is hard for me. I remember years ago, one of my professors, mentors, friends, Dr. Reddick, you guys have heard me talk about him before, he literally showed me this exercise of literally put the thing that you're struggling to give up and grab it and put it on God's altar and tie it to the altar. And I was like, that's weird. But man, don't diss it till you try it. Don't question it. Don't, whatever. Actually try it. That act of going, I'm taking this idol, this temptation, this desire, and I'm putting it on the altar of the Lord.
Can I hop in there real quick? One beautiful thing that I think that we forget sometimes too is that Jesus desires that. Yeah. The moment that we forget to, Lord help me in this too. The moment that we forget or negate giving him those things is the moment when we discredit the cost of the cross. May the Lamb receive the reward of his suffering, right? May the Lamb receive the reward of his suffering. And giving that up is that moment when he goes, that's what I did it for, right?
He purchased everything,
right?
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, I play this game where I'm like, well, I can't just let God forgive all my sins if I'm not willing to let him take all of my heart.
Ooh. Is that a
It's like we don't, that's what Bonhoeffer would go into talking about cheap grace.
Yeah.
He'd be like, it's not like you get more grace and you leave, it's like, it's not the Jesus tab. Well, I'm probably going to sin anyway, so I might as well fall into it, put that on Christ's tab. He's paying for all my drinks tonight. You know what I'm saying? What does it look like to fully surrender all of your heart and the grace that comes with it? That's good. If you aren't content now, you're going to compromise later. If you aren't content now, you're going to compromise later. What does that even mean? If God is not enough for you now, then you're going to compromise in the faith later. Practically, it might go, I'm not fully content in my relationship with Jesus, and I really feel like I need somebody to fulfill that loneliness that I experience or whatever it might be. And so I'm willing to settle for somebody that's of a different faith, or I'm willing to settle for someone that has no faith. And all of a sudden we go, man, I'm not content with the Lord right now. I don't believe God's enough. And so whatever it looks like, I'm not going to actually practice what I preach. I'm not going to actually look for who I need to be married and raise children with one day and continue the legacy of my name one day. I'm just going to hook, line, and sinker immediately for the first person that thinks I'm funny, or the first person that thinks I'm attractive, or the first person that actually doesn't think I'm annoying. And all of a sudden we've compromised. And that compromise, if it doesn't show in the period of dating, I promise it will show in the moment of marriage. And if you don't defend the faith now, it'll be stolen later.
That's good. Hard. Good. Y'all okay? Everybody still here? It's 11:37. We're still locked in. Seatbelt still on.
It is on. Mine's on.
Mine is.
So we're going to go into a couple warning signs really quick.
Super quick. So, Nick, you can go ahead and hit the next one. I realized I probably could have just swiped it on my phone too. And those X's are actually supposed to be arrows. I don't know what happened there. But boredom often leads to discontentment, which often means or leads to lust. And, that can come up in many different ways. Dating apps, websites, eyes wandering, whatever that looks like.
It's like, here's a couple warning signs. It's like, well, how do I know this is a struggle? It's like, Well, if you're bored a lot and you're thinking, I just need somebody to take away my boredom, that's not a good sign. Like, you need Jesus. You don't need, some girl or some guy to take you away from that, because they won't just take you away from your boredom, they'll take you away from your faith.
Yeah.
That's good. And that'll lead to discontentment. That'll go, well, my friendships, the house, the guys I live with, they're not enough for me. My community's not enough for me. And so all of a sudden we actually start to compromise our friendship with people. We start to compromise our community with people. And so all of a sudden you're becoming more isolated. It's like, it's not surprising to me when somebody that's not actually ready starts to date, and then in a month I never see them anymore, and they're not even doing great with the Lord anymore, because I'm going, you started to become discontent in your friendships, in your community, and especially in the Lord. And now you're falling away in the faith, which becomes lust, becomes more of a theme. So it's one thing leads to the next, and all of a sudden, that pornography addiction that you were really struggling with, that you thought, well, if I just start dating somebody, it'll go away. No, the pornography addiction became a sex addiction. Became, I can't stop treating this person that I want to treat as a human being as an object of my affection and my attention. And then you're a landslide, and all of a sudden you're bringing that into your marriage. And oh, by the way, your kids are now struggling with a spiritual addiction that was passed on from their mother or their father because they couldn't deal with it when they were single or when they were in a period of dating. Let's talk about it.
To this point, too, I think these warning signs are also applicable no matter what stage you're in, too. I think that's important to remember, like, whether you are 13 years old and single or, like, 28 and single. Like, it's all going to show up there. For me, personally, that boredom piece shows up in this self-pity mantra where I go, oh, well, whatever. I guess I'll just be single forever. And it's like, whoa, pump the brakes. Suddenly I'm falling into that lie that just keeps spiraling down, where I then become complacent with the people around me, right? Another thing, everywhere you're going, you're always looking for somebody, so you're so distracted you aren't even present where you're at. Yoo-hoo! Come on. Like, I have been there. I can say that. I've had moments in my life where I'm just like, wherever I am, someone will be talking, I'm like, hey, what? Sorry, because my eyes are just like, or I'm more concentrated on a conversation with this one person than I am anyone else, and I forget who's in the room. And then, oh Lord Jesus, help me, God. Everywhere you go, you're trying to fix. God made Lowe's for a reason, y'all. Like, Lowe's is where you can go fix stuff, not in a relationship. Like, we are not going into a relationship looking for somebody to fix. I did that. That was my college relationship. I compromised. I found someone who was attracted to me and thought I was funny after the first joke that I made, like Luke said. But then they also, suddenly we turned each other into our own messiahs. Let's talk about that for a second. I started to recognize it, that I couldn't uphold the standards that they were looking for. She had stuff that she was looking for, and I was like, I can't do that. But what it was neither of us were actually built on the foundation of trusting Christ as our Messiah fully. So then it just turned into us compromising one another. And I think we hit it later, but I'll say it now. Often when the emotional and the spiritual compromise comes into play, where we can't meet each other there, the only common denominator after that point is the physicality. And that's what it led to. It was like, oh, well, we can get away with that because, and it was suddenly this justification of it. So that's important to hang on to.
So that's us. We're talking about, are you in a good relationship with Jesus? Which maybe you're going, you know what? I feel okay about everything you guys are saying. I feel pretty good. Okay, so are you actually ready? Are you actually ready not to go on a date? Are you ready to start looking to date? And here's a really good practice. And you got to be careful here because I'll say this first. Before you even look for someone, ask 3 of your most trusted friends if they genuinely believe that you are ready. Don't choose the people that are just going to say yes, because we know who they are. Listen, we need those people. Just not all the time. It's not all the time.
That's true.
And I would say that's even more reason that a cadre, a small group, is so important, because it's like, oh, let me not just find the 3. I trust my secular friends who want me to, find somebody, want me to be part of their hookup culture, want me to be a part of the sins they're struggling with so they don't feel alone in that. But let's actually think about asking the people that we're rubbing shoulders with, that we're fighting for the same faith. And I would say if any one of them says no, heed their words. Wrestle with that. And this is also that charge on your friends. Like, don't just say no because you're envious of your friend.
Yeah,
say no because you actually see something they could work on, and then are you willing to hold them accountable for the weeks pending from that?
Let's go.
But for real, let's get practical. Like, if you don't first work on yourself, you're going to wreck your partner. I love that Jacob in the Bible would work for Rachel. That Laban was the father of Rachel, and Jacob was like, that's the one I want. I want her. I know God put her on this earth for me. Okay, great. You want her? I want 7 years of your life working in the fields. So Jacob works for 7 years. And then Laban fools him. This is another reason why you should not overdrink. But that's a different sermon for another time. But I want to come for that one too. Put on the boxing gloves. He gets fooled. He sleeps with the wrong woman. I think her name was Leah. Forgive me if I'm wrong. She's probably in heaven. And then... Thank you. I got Granny. This is why we got Granny here. I got Granny. Granny walk with the Lord longer than I've been alive. Bless God. It's awesome, man. Get her to pray for you, too. It's the best. So Laban goes, all right, you want Rachel? I thought you said Leah. Sorry, I don't even know how you get that confused. But okay, you want her 7 more years. Come on, gentlemen. Are we willing to wait? Are we willing to work on ourselves?
Yeah.
To the point that it might take 14 years. Ooh. Now you might be like, well, they live longer then. Okay, but still, are you willing to take a year or 2? Are you willing to take a year? Are you willing to take 6 months?
Yeah.
I mean, he finally works 7 more years and he gets Rachel. Is she worth waiting that long? Is she worth you working on yourself? And ladies, you're not excused either. Are you working on yourselves too, right? Last thing I'll say on this matter, how much time do you actually spend in prayer over it? Come on, Jesus isn't just God, he's your friend. And I love that prayer. Here's what prayer does. Prayer purges us of the emotional overdraw of thinking that we'll overthink things and we'll be anxious about things. And prayer is coming back to that altar and surrendering it to the Lord and talking about these things to the Lord. I remember I would actually pray before I even met Amanda. And I said, Lord, this is who I want in a wife. And I just started dreaming with the Lord and I'd write these things down. And I remember a year later, I was with her folks, with Amanda in Texas. And I read a couple of the notes that I wrote for the woman I was looking for. I mean, I wish I pulled it up right now. Verbatim described her personality and who she is before I even knew really who she was. God sees the desires of your heart because he's putting them there. But the way that you get them is you spend time with him. And he goes, oh, I love this. I'm excited to show you more about who you are in this. Here's a little example of that. NBA playoffs is going on. Don't write me off just yet. One of the biggest ways that the sports teams, even the March Madness tournament, struggle, and you see the team, the veterans from the rookies, is because the teams that have been there before, they've experienced it before, they've talked about it before. And all of a sudden, when the limelight is on and they're under the main stage, you see the teams that fold under pressure and that work through pressure and survive it. The Warriors, by the way, salute, are in the NBA Finals because they've been in the crunch moments, but their veteranship has shown up and they've actually worked through it. What's my point? We want to be proactive, not reactive. How are we already preparing our hearts and praying with the Lord? And that way, when moments of nervousness come, anxiety, maybe you see somebody and you're freaking out, but you go, wait a second, I've been putting this person on the altar for years now. I have nothing to fear. And God's favor is resting on me. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay because I know that God's got somebody better for me. Real talk.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Go ahead.
Sweet.
Let's hit the next one.
So let's talk a little bit about who do you look for, right? So y'all go with one quick story, another quick story. Okay. So I'm going to go back to Newport News in college. My spiritual mom and dad, Barry and Kim Logsdon, married like in their 40s or 50s.
True.
But two of the most godly people that I ever knew. Yeah. My spiritual mom and dad. I go to dinner with them at their house one night. Great dinner. That's where Barry told me, oh, bless your heart, son, you can't fix people. I'm like, okay, great. The next day, I bought the Fix It Jesus t-shirt, if some of y'all have seen. But then I'm leaving their house, and Barry's like walking me out, and Kim comes running up. She's like, grabs his head, kisses him. She's like, I'll see you upstairs. He's like, okay. And he just like, he was this like the giddiest man I've ever met. He was a juvenile and domestic relations court judge. The man saw hard things and had to make hard choices, but just so full of joy all the time. Like his voice literally just spread joy. And he like just watches her go up the steps. And I'm standing at the front door just watching all of this happen. And I'm like right over the threshold. And I just look at him and like I'm watching them. And he like catches my eyes when he comes back. He's like, what? I was like, I just want something like that. And the only thing this man said to me was, well, are you willing to wait for it? Good night. And shuts the door right now. And I was just like, I'm mad at you. I'm really mad. I go home, I go to bed, I wake up the next morning, and I have a text from him when he had woken up, and the only thing that text said was, don't settle. So, with that being said, don't settle, right? Like, we don't want to settle for whoever we think might fit the bill. Like, talk to the Lord about it. Get those 3 or 4 or 16 people that you trust to go like, is this it, you know? And I think that we have to trust, it goes back to trusting the Lord's timing in that. Yeah. What's your vision for the relationship? Proverbs 29:18 says that where there is no vision, the people perish. We've got to have a vision. We've got to, recognize the standard of who we're looking for. Yeah. For me, I know that especially after walking through relationships, I'm looking for someone who loves Jesus. My youth group pastor, let's go back there really quick. He once said, only love someone who loves Jesus more than you do. And I was like, wait, what? But what he was trying to teach us was that this fact of we should all be chasing the Lord first more and more before we start chasing someone else. Actively pursuing Jesus also. We've got who's heard that 2 Corinthians, equally yoked thing, right? So that equal yoking is actually it's an even carrying of the load in that sense. And it's making sure that one person isn't doing more of the work than the other. When the oxen were yoked, and I come from a farm, so I can talk a little bit about cows, but, and I've seen it, well, we don't use cows, we use horsepower, but, and I mean John Deere horsepower. But, when you have those oxen who are equally yoked working towards the same goal, suddenly the load is a lot lighter, but the moment one slips up, it's suddenly all on the other. So it's keeping that
and you
together.
got a slanted landscape, right?
Exactly.
The whole thing. I'll go here real quick. Yeah. Because we're kind of landing here, guys, so prepare for landing. Let's get practical too. Like, how often do you go on a date? Like, again, we're saying we want to be proactive, not reactive, right? Yeah. And so we're thinking about this. If you're single, it's like, well, what's my vision for dating? You can't have too much of a vision because then you don't let the person be the person. But enough of a vision that, and really I'm talking to you men because we are called to be leaders and cultivators. Yeah. And so what does that look like? How often do you go on a date? Yeah. How are you intentional about that date? Netflix and chill is not a thing. Yeah. And just going to the movies every time is not a thing. You're not getting to know a person. I'm grateful that when Amanda and I first started dating, all we had was FaceTime. And think about that for a second. Yeah. That it wasn't like, okay, let's bowl and we're kind of bowling. It was like, no, all we were doing was sitting in front of our video screens talking to each other. All we had was communication. That's it, right? It wasn't this other distraction, or it wasn't going and doing something fun, which I would say is important. Like, don't just meet all the time either. But it accelerated so much of how we got to know each other and how we fell in love with each other, because it was like, I'm over here FaceTiming this girl for 3 hours at a time, and I want more. You know what I mean? And so you can't hide behind anything. It's like, here we are just talking.
And another great, I went on a date last year and we just got dinner. That was it. We got dinner and walked around, but we talked. It was that same piece of actually communicating with one another. Because if you're communicating and you're having the chance to have those conversations, then you're actually learning who you're talking to, and you can see the compatibility.
Yeah. How do you resolve disagreements? How do you walk through different perspectives on life matters? How will you be disciplined in the physical temptation? Where will that accountability come from? So these, again, are just practical things that we can do in our own stewardship of our heart to kind of prepare for those things. And then we just want to talk, in our closing point here, a little bit about character and chemistry. Now, think about the story of Boaz and Boaz and Ruth. And the short of it is this, is that Ruth is daughter to Naomi, and there's this huge issue going on where Naomi's husband dies, and so Naomi's like, Ruth and the other girl, I can't remember her name. You got it, Granny? Or come on, get yourself a spiritual granny at the church. Come on, somebody. So Orpah's like, okay, I'm out, and Ruth is like, no, I'm gonna stay. There's some character being shown in this moment.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense because Naomi's going, I have nothing to offer you. Back then, especially back then, it really was a man's world in so many ways, and what the man provided in work and in life and in character and in legacy was really, really important. So Naomi's going, dude, you guys just go find men and start your lives. And Ruth is going, I don't feel God on that. Like, I want to stay loyal and with you.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward a little bit, and Ruth is going out to find food for Naomi and her to survive. Don't have a man she can lean on and depend on in this moment. And who does she find but this young, strapping-looking man named Boaz? And Ruth comes back and says, Naomi, I found this man. He's amazing. He could be our kinsman redeemer, because that meant that this could be a man that could actually cover our family line and take care of us again.
Dang.
Well, fast forward a little bit more, and Ruth and Boaz are a thing. God is shipping it. It's about to happen. But then, lo and behold, in the story, there's actually somebody that's more presentable than Boaz in this moment, who essentially gets first pick on the block. But he looks at Ruth and he goes, oh, she's a Moabite. I'm not interested in that. So he rejects her. And Boaz, in the midst of Ruth being rejected by another man, Boaz goes, oh, but you don't know her character. You don't know what I know.
Yeah.
And Boaz, what we learn, is also a man of character. And Ruth is going, well, I don't want that man. Because he might be a better pick in the eyes of society, but I know the character of Boaz.
Yeah.
And so here we have in this moment two people of noble character, the word says, that knew each other better than physicality, better than promise. It was a character and a chemistry that they knew they shared.
Yep.
So important. So what can we learn a little bit about why character and chemistry is so important?
I'm just going to throw all of these up on the screen really fast. So first off, can you be yourself around this person?
So important.
Like,
gosh, it's important.
if you get, and the quick litmus test for that is, are you performing, right? So if you're performing around this person and you aren't actually yourself, probably something to check on. Can you have hard conversations? Can you have fun, silly conversations together? Do you enjoy spending time with them alone and in groups with other people? I know that was something I had to call one of my friends out in college on. I was like, bro, y'all are together all the time, but it's always by yourselves and we never see you in community. What's up?
We got some sauce for that next week on Dating Too, don't worry.
Yeah. So, just something to pay attention to.
Oh, yeah,
do you enjoy talking to them? But talking to them, right? We aren't dating ourselves, which I know Luke will probably say again in a minute. But, are we talking to them? Asking them questions.
I love what Proverbs 31:30 says. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. Listen.
Gracious.
We're all going to get old, believe it or not.
I'm a witness.
And we're all not going to look as good as Granny in her age.
That's right.
I just say. And so, don't just fall for the first person that you're like, I'm physically attracted to that person.
Dude,
Physical attraction is not wrong. You were actually created to be attracted to the features on a woman's body and men on a man's body. That's beautiful and good and holy and a gift that God has created in us, but don't let that be the only thing.
Yeah, that's good. If you don't, this is again where that shows up. If you don't have that establishment of the character and of the chemistry, then that's where the only thing you rely on is the physicality of a relationship. And for me, that was it's the natural reaction. It's where it's going to go, but it's also just a slip and slide.
Yeah.
It's downhill and not great.
I'll add, just kind of in close here, but is this the person you're looking to pursue? Is this a person of true integrity, humility, and do they have good character?
Yeah.
Here's a warning sign. You shouldn't feel threatened in your relationship.
Yeah.
I remember I was in college. I struggled with this so badly. The women that I would date, I was constantly concerned. What are they doing one-on-one with that guy? Why are they out at this party? Just these things that I really struggle with and would cause so much anxiety in my life. And I just got to a point where it was the second I feel that, I'm either going to talk to them about it, or if I really know that they're suspicious and that there isn't real character here, I'm out, man. I'm not going to play games. And I want to hit this so hard for you guys. I dated plenty before I met Amanda. And the first time I FaceTimed Amanda, I had never felt so enjoyed by somebody because of just being who I was.
Dude, yeah.
We laughed so much. Midway through our FaceTime, I went to the bathroom. I didn't have to go to the bathroom. I texted my house and my dad. And I said, please pray for me.
Yep.
I found the one. I'm in trouble. I need prayer. I need prayer because I don't want to mess this one up. And I'm telling you, like, find somebody of true character. Find someone you have chemistry with. And if you're going, well, how soon? Like, what if? How can I really know? You'll eventually know.
Yeah.
Because if you can't be so comfortable to be who you are. Now, let me say this, and I do want to hit this. Don't go looking to date yourself.
Yeah.
There was times where I could not stand this woman dating her and more her, me, like couldn't stand each other. But it was also like, you can't leave this relationship. I'm marrying you. Like, this is a thing. We're doing this. It's so good, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to refine each other. I had this thought, like, I can't wait to eventually find the person that I'm going to marry because I can't wait them to see how much of Jesus I'm like. And I learned that they were actually going to show me how much of Jesus I wasn't like. Does that make sense? It wasn't like, look at me and how good and holy and amazing. And it was like, oh my gosh, I have so much to work on, but you're going to stick through my life with me and help me learn that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm telling you guys, it's worth the wait. It's worth the wait. It's worth the wait. And find someone of chemistry and character who enjoys who you are, not who you think you're supposed to be or who you need to be.
That's good.
Do they double your desire for God or cut it in half? We're going to end on that point. The person you're looking to date, do they make you want to run more with Jesus, love Jesus more, or do they make you not?
Yeah.
Double your love for God or
Yeah.
cut it in half?
Yeah.
Amen.